This is episode 33 of the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. Welcome to episode 33 of the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. Today I have Michal Wach on the show. Michael is a real estate investor that started 10 years ago, but didn't realize that there were creative ways that you could come up with financing. So he was doing the old save up the down payment to buy the next property. Well, long story short, about 18 months ago, he started realizing that meetups and podcasts were a way to accelerate his learning and accelerate his investing. Since then, he's done multiple deals. He's bought a pre-construction. He's doing a duplex conversion right now. He's on a mission to grow his cash flow to the point where he's at roughly 55 to 60% of his current income, so that if he wanted to, he'd be in a position where he could quit his job. So this is the classic financial independence move, and it's another very inspiring story by somebody who's actively out there learning, and he's also not afraid to mentor people where he's at. Michael is an accountant by trade, and he's working a job that he likes and wants to continue working, but he's keeping his options open and he's setting himself up for the future so that he can continue to be a creative real estate investor. I'm not going to spend too much time on this intro, but I do want to ask you real quick, if you could please take a moment and review this episode if you have not already, subscribe to it if you did not already, and maybe tell a friend about it if you think the information here could help them too. Here is the episode with Michal Wach. Welcome to the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. Today I have Michal Wach. Is that all right?
You got it.
On the show. That's a much more simple Polish name than some of the other ones I've tried to pronounce.
It is. There's no ski at the end.
There's no ski or a lot of other syllables that I can't say. Anyways, Michael, thank you for being on the show.
Not a problem. Thanks for having me, Andrew.
Well, it's probably been a long time coming because we've known each other for quite a few months through the meetup, and now finally making this happen. So it's good to finally have you on. If you don't mind, would you just give the elevator pitch as to what it is that you do as an investor and what you do for a profession as well?
Sure. For work, I have a full-time job. I'm an internal auditor. I started many years ago in external audit. I've always been a numbers guy. I enjoy spreadsheets, financial analysis, reviewing statements. So that's my day job. And in terms of real estate investing, we have been long-term buy and hold investors for about 10 years now. A couple of single family homes, a duplex that we're currently converting, and then another duplex in the works sometime next year.
Okay. So the conversion, is that a relatively new thing for you?
It is, yeah. We've kind of looked at the strategy that we've had for the first 7 or 8 years of our investing, and we've changed it up a bit. We used to buy turnkey properties, really very little work, if any, needed, and mostly for appreciation, just kind of hold it, put in good tenants in a nice neighborhood, and that's what aligned with our lifestyle over time. And now we've kind of started focusing a little bit more on cash flow and on the buy, renovate, rent, refinance model that a lot of investors have been using. So that's the strategy that we're applying on this property.
Okay. So why don't you just go back a little bit? You bought first one 10 years ago. Did you take a little bit of a break, or were you kind of just sitting on that one and then decided to acquire more?
Yeah, we it was actually a new build property in Hamilton on the mountain. We weren't planning on buying it then. It was actually my wife's parents were in line at a model home, and they ended up buying a property that day, and so did we. We were just planning on bringing them coffee, but we saw the nice layouts and the nice designs. We ended up buying that 10 years ago, and then really we were just saving for that next down payment for close to 6 or 7 years. We didn't know about any of the strategies that investors are implementing these days, where they're using other people's money or they're borrowing funds. We just thought you had to save up for your 20% down, and that's what we did.
Yeah, what changed?
Really, so what has changed recently in our strategy?
What changed in your mindset? Where did your learning come? You obviously realized there's some strategies that you can use. Where did that happen and how?
I'd say about 18 months ago is really when the best way I can describe it is just these blindfolds were taken off. I was introduced to the real estate agent that I work with still, within the Rockstar Real Estate Brokerage,
Okay.
where he's almost like a coach and a mentor as well. That's the model that they use. They only work with real estate investors, and that's when we started looking at properties together when we were hunting for a third property, and the whole network of investors and the strategies that they're using, not just buy and hold, but flipping and short-term rentals and renovating and refinancing and how you leverage money. These are things that I just never knew about before. So I'd say having my mind open to podcasts that were out there and the meetups that I was never interested in, because no one around me was investing in real estate. No one in the family, none of my friends. We were really the only ones that owned the property during that time. So I definitely say that was the biggest changing factor.
And whereabouts do you live?
We're in Hamilton.
You're in Hamilton, and your investing is primarily in Hamilton as well?
So yes, we own that first one in Hamilton. We've since purchased in St. Catharines and in Welland most recently. Our upcoming purchase, which will be ready next year, is in St. Catharines again. We used to own another one in Hamilton, which kind of didn't align with our investing strategy anymore. So we sold that off a few months ago as a townhouse in Hamilton as well.
Okay. And for your average house right now that's in your portfolio, you said you have 4 rentals in your portfolio right now?
3 right now, and it's a new build duplex in St. Catharines that will be our 4th. So that's about a year from being ready.
Okay. And then what about the one that you said in Welland that you're converting? Is that's in the 3?
Yeah.
But it's not rented yet?
No.
So you're just about to start renovating that one?
Yeah, we just went through the process of finding a contractor. We have our drawings and our permits from the city ready. And so it seems like I'm learning something every day when it comes to taking a single family home and legally turning it into 2 separate units.
Yeah, this is one of the things that you had mentioned when we were kind of chatting last week. I forget where, Instagram or something. And you'd mentioned that you were working on it, and you had asked me for my suggestions as far as contractors go. I'm curious if you could sort of walk us through, because it's interesting. You're going through this for the first time. It's fresh. There's so much that I forget about the first time that I went through it. What are some of the things that have been learning experiences for you? What are some things you didn't expect? Some things that you did? Walk me through it.
Yeah, sure.
And tell us what you're doing too. Yeah, just duplex conversion, right?
Yes. Yeah. It's a single family home in a nice neighborhood. It's Welland is a city that we've heard a lot of good things about recently, so that's where we went for that purchase. We knew that we wouldn't be able to do much of the work ourselves. To date, I have been able to do like cleanups and turnover between tenants for this one because it's such a big project. We were looking for a general contractor. So I started by reaching out to my network, by speaking with my agent coach, reaching out to probably 30 or so investors. I just messaged a bunch of individuals on Facebook, on Instagram, asking if they knew a general contractor in the Welland area, somebody that they've worked with or that they know of that could put in a legal second suite. And we also need to do some work in the upstairs unit. And I describe it best as kind of an adventure. We ended up getting four quotes, another verbal quote, so 4 in writing. Some were very detailed, or every item, the painting for the upstairs, flooring for the downstairs, each of the kitchens, washrooms, everything was very detailed. Some of the other quotes were 1-pagers. Like, this is a pretty big project. We're in the $100,000 range for this whole renovation. So those are some of the things I saw. There was contractors that we were trying to set up meetings with, and you'd have a couple of good messages with them, a phone call, but then they never show up, or they show up late.
They just don't show up at all?
Yeah.
Wow.
There was a couple where I didn't get the quotes for quite a bit of time. Like, it was about 2 weeks. So it was really a wide variety of experiences. I'd say there's probably three contractors there that I felt really comfortable with. I could have hired any one of them that showed up on time. They were trying to save me money when I was showing them. I had the drawings, kind of rough drawings by then. They were saying you could save $500 here, $1,000 here if we do this differently or this. Those are the guys that you feel pretty comfortable with. And also, as I was getting responses and recommendations back from my network, there was the same names that kept on being mentioned. So that also gives you some comfort. But then on the other hand, there was also a couple of contractors that I was being warned about to watch out, stay away from. So it really shows you that the network that we're part of in the cities that we invest in, it really is a small world, right? Everybody knows everybody. We see each other at the same networking events, at the same meetups. We listen to each other on the podcast. So if you're in a transaction with somebody, you're doing a deal, you don't want to do anything under the table, right?
No, the reputation does precede people. And this is one of the things. I have somebody that's been messaging me. He heard me on a different podcast, and he's not a real estate investor yet, but he wants to renovate his home, and he's asking me these questions. And one of my comments back to him is, when you're getting these quotes, price could make sense. There's probably a few guys that, like you said, price can make sense. But then you're looking at stuff, well, did they show up on time? What's their reputation among the other investors that have worked with this person or encountered them? Are they on the don't hire list, the non-existent one, because that's illegal? But God, I wish it did exist. These are the things that you got to start thinking about. And to me, a contract can be manipulated. Like you said, a one pager. Like what are all the things that aren't being said? It's not to say that you couldn't hire the guy that has a one-page contract, but it is sort of a bit of a minefield. Like it's what about extras? What about things that were outside of the scope? What about when you ask for something and they didn't tell you? So that can work. I think it's sort of a recipe for disaster, unless the person has a fantastic reputation and you talk to 3 people who worked with him beforehand. That's right. And they say, you know what, this is just the way this tends to go. He's a simple guy. This is how he operates, but it gets done. And, he's very fair and honest. Well, if that's the way it is, then that could work out great.
Yep. Yeah, so definitely a lot of lessons learned. The network is very helpful. When I reached out with just a simple question, many people went out of their way to ask me if I wanted help reviewing any of their quotes, if they wanted to break down some of the amounts. So definitely a lot of lessons that I can apply to the next renovation.
I actually love that. I love the idea of taking a look at other people's quotes just to see kind of what's out there, what's happening now, because it helps me. I add that to my little mental library of pricing for what things cost or what they are costing. Because in isolation, somebody might just not like your job and price you high, right? So it's good to see what other people are getting priced on other jobs. Okay, so have you chosen somebody to do your job yet?
Yeah, we did select a contractor a few days ago, and we feel pretty comfortable. It's the strategy aligns with our lifestyle, right? We really want a legal 2-unit property in the estimated kind of 3 to 3.5 month time frame. Okay. I'm taking care of most of the work on the exterior of the house, the landscaping, kind of cleaning some of the bushes. We might build a fence in the backyard to separate the 2 units because the backyard's pretty wide. But in terms of selecting a contractor for the inside work, we have a pretty good plan going forward.
Do you feel comfortable sharing the name, or you don't want to share the name?
Yeah, I mean, I can do it. It's Blackjack Contracting. He's Blackjack. They've done John? A few. Yeah. He's somebody that I've seen at the networking events, at the right club. I've seen him at your meetup before. Yep. I know multiple other contractors that have used him. I walk through his properties both in person, and also I've seen him on social media doing his own walkthroughs of his renovation project. So all of those things, along with the price, like, you still have to be competitive, right? When I put all that together, and that's what lets me sleep at night.
Yeah. Sometimes the lowest price is not your best price, because it's happened to me with townhouses that I built. We had a guy, and he was the lowest price, and other guys would have cost probably $1.20 more per square foot. But I easily paid that in fixing the mistakes that the guy made. So yeah, not always the lowest price. In fact, a lot of people say you should throw away your lowest quote.
Yeah, I've seen that before too. A few of these contractors were pretty close. One of the interesting thoughts that I shared with the other investors is just how expensive renovations have gotten in general. I know when I was speaking to some investors about a year and a half ago, these rentals were like 30,000-40,000 less, it seems like.
Yes.
Now we are doing quite a bit of work upstairs in this unit, so that has to be incorporated as well. I did the demo on my own with a couple of helpers trying to save some money there, but all in all, I guess the contractors are busy. If they create a nice product at the end, and that's able to get me my reappraisal value where I need it at, and I can pull out even all of that renovation cost and leave the down payment 20% in the property, I'm a happy camper.
Yeah, what do you think? And that was my next question: is how do you think this is going to turn out? I was wondering if we could walk through the numbers, and I know you don't have concrete anything yet, but you do know roughly where you're going to end up. You know what you paid for it.
Yep.
So what was your purchase price on this place?
It's $322,000.
And what do you figure you'll be in for reno and carrying costs?
It's going to be around $120,000. We're not sure if what we're going to do with appliances, if we're going to buy brand new or look for used, but I'd say 120 is a good estimate.
How are you funding the renovations? Did you save up the money for it, or are you doing a purchase plus improvements with the bank?
Some of it is savings from the sale of our Hamilton townhouse that we didn't want to keep anymore, and the rest will just be temporarily using lines of credit.
Okay, so you've got available equity that you can pull out. In other words, by using your lines of credit.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're going to be in for about 442, based on the sounds of it. What do you figure your appraised value will be?
It's kind of a wild card now. I've run my various assumptions at 440, 460, 480. I don't think we can hit 500 on this one, but I mean, who knows, maybe we will. But if we use anywhere between 460 and 470, I'd be happy with that. I know another investor sold a similar property in that area recently for 480. It was turnkey. It was renovated and legal.
Sergio?
Maybe.
Sergio got called out.
Yeah. I don't know what other comps are out there. That's something I'll start working with my agent on maybe in a month or so to put that package for the appraiser together. Yeah. Before the reappraisal. But if we end up in that area and we can pull out the majority, if not all, the rental costs, I think I'd be happy.
So you can obviously perform some sensitivity on it as you did, but if you have a 460 value and your purchase and improvements are 442, so if you get 80% of 460, that's 368. So then we can just go 442 minus 368. So you're $74,000 invested.
Yep.
Okay. So now here's where that could change, and I have my Excel sheet up here. So if we went to 470, how would that change? Well, that'd go down to 66,000 net investment after you get your refinance back. But let's leave it at 460, so 74,000. And what do you figure your cash flow will be?
The mortgage right now is a mortgage, property taxes, insurance. It is about $1,450. So after refinance, if we add in another 500 or so for that refinance amount, we'd be at 2,000, let's say, of costs per month. And the numbers I've been seeing for upper and lower units are around 1,700 and 1,300.
Yeah, so you'd be around 3,000 on the building.
Yeah, so the cash flow based on that might be around 1,000.
But if you allow some maintenance amount, then maybe you bring that down to like 900 or 800, somewhere in there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so let's just say 900 is your cash flow. So equals 12 times 900. So you're 10,800 on your cash flow per year. And then if we figure your appreciation, we'll just say 3% in Welland, because
let's do it.
Why not? So you're figuring a $460,000 value times 3%. Which is going to work out to be 13,800. And then if we wanted to do a mortgage pay down, I know you listen to my podcast, Michael, so you know I do 3%.
I enjoy the numbers, Andrew.
I do 3%. It's not an exact science, but it is in the ballpark. It's in the ballpark. So 3% pay down on your mortgage of $368,000 in this hypothetical, assuming everything works out the way you want it to. So your total return is comprised of cash flow, appreciation, and mortgage pay down. And we are going to see what that is. Have you already done this number, Michael?
I've done it a few different ways. I seem to end up around 35% typically.
Return? Yeah. That's not bad. So I've got a total return of $35,600. So if we wanted to find your return on investment, we just take that number and we divide it by our net investment, which is after your refi, which is the $74,000. So actually I'm seeing 48%.
Even higher. I was probably a little bit more conservative with some of my estimates in there.
Right. Well, we said 900 on the cash flow. If you wanted to be more conservative, you could say less. 8. So if you wanted to say 800, well, how would that affect things? So we could just quickly change that number, and then that would bring you down to 46%. Again, maybe you didn't factor 3% appreciation.
Yeah. I mean, it sure beats GICs, mutual funds, stocks, and bonds.
Yes, it definitely beats those. If you're getting 40+% return on your investment, you're doing well.
That's right.
And how do you see this fitting into your larger strategy? So this is one property. Mm-hmm. How do you see this fitting into the grand scheme of things for you? Because you're going to be up to 4 properties pretty soon.
Yep.
And where is it that you're trying to go with it?
Yeah, we're at an interesting time. I think once we stabilize in our portfolio, so with this renovation being complete, with the refinance done, and next summer closing on this turnkey duplex, we'll have those 4 properties. We'll know what our cash flow is per month at that point, and then we'll probably have to make a decision. Do we want to keep on buying these nice residential houses in nice neighborhoods, putting in nice tenants, or is it time to maybe think a little bit bigger, think into some 3-4 plexes, think into maybe some apartment buildings, 8, 10, 12, 20 units, right? And that's when I would obviously need to partner with others. But it definitely opens up a lot of interesting options for us. Right now, we're just focused on really stabilizing and getting to a point where there's less moving parts.
Yeah, and I can appreciate that. I think there's a natural growth that needs to be taken with this. Like, you start with single families, you go into a couple of duplex conversions, and then you maybe look at a triplex, 4plex, and 8plex, and kind of grow. And I think that's the right way. It definitely, to me, seems like a bad idea for somebody to go out having never bought anything and buy an 8plex. Not that they couldn't, and it's not necessarily a bad idea, but it is one that will come with its headaches.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, I've heard from multiple investors that are more advanced, more seasoned, that one of their, I don't know if regret is the right word, but one of the things that when they think back to earlier in their investing career, they wish that they would have scaled to those larger properties sooner.
Yes.
That it always seemed like a very complicated and big transaction until you do one of them. Mm-hmm. And then you think to yourself, wow, I could have been doing this for the last X number of years.
You know what has concerned me with it, and I've been wanting to do it real bad for a long time, is for me, I've always borrowed private money when I've done stuff, and it's always been expensive. So, call it 10% on average. Maybe it's 9, depends. It could be 15. And when you get into those kind of numbers and it takes time, then all of a sudden it starts adding up. So I'd factor renovations, and especially looking at on-market deals, and I'm scratching my head looking at them saying, look, by the time I factor renovations and carrying cost, I mean, I'd be in a position where after all that said and done, I wouldn't be pulling all my money out, and maybe I wouldn't even be pulling half of it out. And, depending on if it's a multi-million-dollar deal, that might mean, that might have a significant impact, not being able to pull your money out. And then there's all the variables, right? Like, what if you have problem tenants, right? Because my strategy is always looking at these and saying, okay, well, these tenants need to go. And then I do my thing, renovate, make it look nice, and then put new tenants in. Mm-hmm. And to me, all the moving parts of it, as you mentioned moving parts before, they have sort of stopped me from doing the larger scale buildings. Like, an individual building on its own, sold vacant, and I can put my own tenant in it. It does have its perks, but it also is very slow progress. When you wrap your head around it, is that one of your concerns? And where do you see that being a problem for you?
I think it's one of the question marks that I haven't kind of dug into deep enough. I feel like I've built that team, that power team, for the current types of properties and investments that we are very comfortable with. I would probably need to tweak and adjust some of those individuals if I were to scale bigger.
Yeah.
We've really just been focusing on buying the best properties that we can thus far and being the best landlords. So I've started kind of dropping hints to individuals and picking their brain, folks that I know are constantly looking at those 6 to 20 unit properties these days. But I haven't spent too much time on it so far.
Okay. I actually have a guy named Mark coming on later today. Hopefully he's still coming, and he's doing some of the larger scale multifamily investing. So I'll be interested in picking his brain, because you know what, I don't know a lot of guys that are. I mean, I know Carmen. I'm sure you've heard her episode. She does things at a massive scale, but she's got such a team behind her. Seeing somebody a little bit more in that I just crossed into this, buying 10 plexes, 20 plexes kind of territory is very interesting to me at this point. Yeah. Since it's very on point for our conversation today. Since you're doing this process of getting a permit, so you bought the property, you got the permit, there was many different things that happened in that process. Can you just walk us through what it looks like? So this will be particularly of interest for anyone who lives in Ontario, anyone who lives across Canada, really, because the process will be similar. And even some of our friends in the US, depending on your municipality, it should be a similar procedure. So could you just walk us through? So you found a property, wrote the offer. How did you know it was something you could convert?
Hey guys, let's just pause the episode for a second and hear from our sponsors.
Today's episode is brought to you by the Real Estate Growth Summit, hosted in Toronto, Ontario at the Pearson Convention Centre on November 11th and 12th. I have Dylan here to talk to you about the things that you're going to learn at the Real Estate Growth Summit. Dylan, take it away.
Thanks, Andrew. Really excited to be sponsors of your podcast. This event is for listeners like you that want to take your real estate sales or real estate investing business to the next level and to replace your active income with passive income through learning and implementing the systems and processes used by the best in the industry. Be prepared to walk away with some tangible tools and an action plan that I have personally used to become a top performer in the industry in just under 3 years. To get your tickets before prices go up, visit www.realestategrowthsummit.ca. And for being loyal listeners of Andrew's podcast, there's a special discount code just for you. All you have to do is enter Andrew REI as the promo code at checkout to save $50 off admission. The only way you're ever going to reach your massive goals is to take massive action. So go get your tickets today and we'll see you at the event.
Okay, let's get back to the episode.
So I was really relying on the professionals around me, starting with my real estate agent. We're at the point now where when we walk into one of these bungalows, whether it's Hamilton, St. Catharines, Welland, Niagara Falls, Brantford, even, based on the ceiling height and a separate entrance already being there, that it can be turned into that you can put a legal second suite in the basement. Parking is also another big one. So a lot of these driveways are already 2 cars wide, which is what you need. We're typically shopping in the suburbs. We're not looking in downtowns where there might be the need for a minor variance. We've never had to do that. So in this case, we walked through this property. It was one of many. The price was right. We knew that there was other investors that might jump on it. So we quickly put in an offer, tied it up. It was actually tenanted. So the strategy we used is we tried with that first offer to ask for vacant possession. We gave a long closing, 3 months, knowing that the owners might not accept that offer. They did. So then the onus was on them to have those tenants leave the property before closing. So about 2.5 months went by and we found out that the tenants were gone. The house was empty. So that was a big plus for us. We wouldn't have purchased it if we couldn't get vacant possession. And then a couple of weeks before closing, we started getting our contractors in for quotes, and we started getting both my agent, who's actually very gifted at designing and laying out a plan. He's done multiple conversions before. He was amazing, along with the home inspector, who's his guy that he uses. He's a BCIN. He knows the city. He used to work for the city. So those two guys combined, I really leveraged their expertise in fitting in 3 basements, a washroom, a stackable washer dryer, a nice kitchen into that basement. And the upstairs, we also redesigned a little bit of that kitchen. So we actually applied for the permit probably on the first or second day that I closed, and it was unbelievable. Like the city was great. I think it was 6 or 7 days later, we had a permit in hand. So
that's quick.
As I was getting it is quick. I know it usually takes a couple of weeks. And so I had received a few quotes based on the kind of draft drawings, and the last few quotes came in with the final drawings.
Okay, so now to get the permit drawings, did the same building inspector that you said is a BCIN, which is a building code identification number, which just means they're allowed to submit drawings for permit. Did that person do your drawings, or you had somebody else do them?
He did the drawings. He did them. Yeah.
So he inspected the building and did the drawings. That's handy. So when they come out, they tell you what the condition is. They know everything that's in there, and they design around it. That sounds like a great contact. Yeah. And on that note, I would definitely say, like, when you're getting your drawings done, if you're doing basement conversions, find somebody that's done many of them, because that's where the creativity, they know all the hurdles and the problems you run into, and they're not learning on your project. They already know. Like, everyone's learning, but you don't want them learning like from zero on your project.
Yeah. I think I owe both of those guys, my agent, coach, and the inspector. Yeah. I owe them a lot of favors, because they really kind of not only helped me learn a lot, but they kind of carried me on this one, right? I just had to pick which layout I preferred. We thought of 2 bedrooms at first. We thought of fitting 2 washrooms in that basement. And then we decided we had some issues with the support pillars. They're the big wide ones. We thought of swapping them out for the metal beams, but in the end we just we decided on the 3 bedrooms. And it might actually be a suite that we consider even for an Airbnb in the future. It has its own separate entrance. If we split that backyard and the upper level tenants, I've heard of some investors use their upper level tenants to do some of the cleaning and some of the work when there's an Airbnb unit in the property. You
could probably entice them quite easily. That's say, right. Hey, kick back on your rent. Help me out. Yeah, absolutely. Because they're there, right? Yeah. Why wouldn't they? Assuming they have the time. Why wouldn't they be open to it? That's right. Yeah, it just seems like a great investment to own, especially if you're getting ROIs in that territory. But I love how you're talking about working with professionals, and I learned this with mortgage people. Coming from being in the mortgage business, I would acknowledge my what I can do and what I can't, and what I don't have, what I'm not the best person to do. And I found guys that could do student rental financing when I wasn't able to get it done through my channels. So talking to other investors, say, hey, who's doing that deal? I went so far as to call people who had bought houses comparable to the ones I was trying to finance, saying, hey, who did your financing? Handy, man. Like, who sold that to you? Who's doing financing for you? It's, networking is everything.
It really is, Andrew. Like I said, those first 6, 7, 8 years of our investing, I was a lone wolf. I was doing everything on my own. We had a very nice real estate agent, very nice broker. But that team to serve me as a real estate investor, it just wasn't in place. And everything has shifted 180 degrees since we kind of started surrounding ourselves with the right individuals.
This is the unfortunate thing. Your aunt or uncle who's the realtor, or your aunt or uncle who's the mortgage broker, or what have you, can be perfectly nice, but could hold you back like an anchor. If you're trying to progress as an investor, you got to work with the people who are doing it right where you are right now. That's right. There's no replacement for that. So I'm taking my own advice now. I'm like, I've only been going to my meetup. I need to be going to every meetup that I can possibly go to. So
it's not always easy with a full-time job and family, and you need to find time for yourself as well to attend those evening and those weekend events, but in terms of value, it comes back in spades.
Yeah, in 12 hours to edit this podcast episode. And the other 5 it's worth it. It is. Honestly, I love the creation part of the podcasts. The work side of it is challenging. But for those listening, you can thank me by writing me a review and subscribing to the podcast. I'll throw that little plug in there. So it's definitely, but it's part of it, right? Because now when I go to a networking event, it's a little easier for me to start a conversation. A lot of people have, know somebody listening to the podcast, and it kind of, it breaks the ice pretty well, which I definitely like, because believe it or not, I know I talk a lot. I think in those settings, I have been a little bit introverted typically. So it's nice to kind of break that ice and just get the conversation rolling.
Yeah, and what it's also allowed me, which I really like, I've always been a quiet and shy individual, but attending these events and also posting more on social media, letting family or friends know what I'm doing, I've really started enjoying mentoring others. Like I have young investors that don't own any properties, or they're just buying their own, or they're starting to scale. And they're now reaching out to me, and I love providing advice, like connecting. Yeah. I just met this weekend at the Welland property. I was doing the demo, and there was an investor through Instagram that reached out to me, came with his work shoes and his gloves. He actually helped us throw stuff into the bin while we were talking strategy. He was telling me about an off-market deal that he's about to put an offer in, second offer, giving me the comps that he had pulled. So we were learning from each other, helping each other out, and all of that starts with the fact that we are out there networking. We're all talking to each other. Everyone knows what the other people are doing in terms of projects.
It helps, right? I mean, there are certainly people out there who don't want other people to know what they're doing, because they're like, oh, when you know, you take away my opportunity, which there is some truth to that. But I think it's not 1 + 1 = 2 when you get two bright-minded people who are problem solvers together. It's 1 + 1 = like a million. Versus, you might you might show your hand, so to speak, of what you're doing right now. But then the merging of ideas that comes from talking can sometimes just, all of a sudden you're buying a 10-unit building when you wouldn't have otherwise.
That's right. And
then you grow astronomically. So I'm all about that, but I know not everybody is, which they're probably not the ones coming to the meetup anyway. So that's okay. What would you say, not everybody has the time, and I know I get a lot of the requests for my time, through Insta and Facebook, and it's not that I don't want to help everyone out. My typical response is, I'll do what I can through the messages. The coffee meetups are pretty tough to do with everything I've got going on. But for people who are getting started and they want to learn, like, what would you suggest to them would be the best way to avoid making the mistakes themselves? Would you say just get out to the events, or is there something more they can do beyond that?
So I can speak to exactly what I did. For me, it started with podcasts. There was 3 or 4 podcasts, and it was only 18 months ago that I started listening to. And after each one, I would jot down the name of the investor. I'd reach out to them on Facebook, or just add them as a friend. I'd visit their website. So it started with podcasts. That it's a free resource. I had a commute of 45 minutes each way anyway, so I was able to eat through a lot very quickly. And then little by little, I learned of these clubs, of these networking events that exist, right? I attend the Rockstar ones. I'm a member there. I go to the Right Club. I've been to a couple of Matt McKeever's events, right? So there's just so many these days. These things weren't around 10 years ago when I was getting started. Those are all free resources, mostly, that you can attend. And then also, if you're a newbie investor, really starting by trying to find that real estate agent that's an investor themselves. That was if I had to think about the tip of the iceberg, that was it for me. That one individual opened up their whole network to me, showed me the systems that they have in place, whether it's finding the property, listing the property for rent, doing the open houses and the showings, how you make tenants sign in, how you do the credit checks. I thought I was an expert in those things. I knew nothing until I was walked through filling that first property that we bought with them. And then also maintenance. That was always like something that it irks me when I would get that text from a tenant. Luckily, we had pretty good turnkey properties for those beginning years. But now as we evolve and we'll have multiple families living in one property, there's a higher probability that you will get complaints or requests for work. We're not buying brand new houses anymore. So just the way we were at a showing once, we were looking at properties, and he gets a text from one of his tenants of his multiple properties that the furnace stopped working, and he literally texted the tenant to call his HVAC guy, because he knows the HVAC guy can check it out that day, the next day, and just send him the bill. Like, these were things being brought up by my dad. We'd never pay for contractors. You try to do everything on your own, and that's what I try to do on my properties. But it just being exposed to these systems and these best practices was just priceless. So that's some of the kind of key advice that I would give.
Right. And just on that note, so I do the same thing. I actually send out an email. So it's mostly student rentals in my portfolio. So I send out an email, and I'm due to send it out because the students are moving in right now as we speak. This is what you do when this happens. Here's the company that handles my plumbing and HVAC if something happens. They have a 24-hour emergency line. Something happens in the middle of the night. You don't call me, you call them. And especially, flooding this. But I give them examples. Like, if this happens, you send me an email. Standard maintenance, send me an email. I'll make the decision. Emergency, you call these guys. And that procedure has helped. I'll get texts, and I'll just redirect them to email me. Some of them don't, so I just try and condition that pattern, because if I get emails, it's traceable. I can look back and see who's emailed me and what, and then it helps me to keep organized. So like you said, all systems.
When you're at one property or two and they're close to home, you could get away with doing a lot of that maintenance on your own. But as you continue to grow and scale, it's important to have those systems in place and the contractors on call. What really helped me be more comfortable is I just started putting a Rolodex of contractors together, just writing them down from these podcasts. When I go to a networking event and I hear of a good one of the perks of the Rockstar membership is this Facebook group where we're exchanging contractors nonstop. I'm writing those down every time. And if I need to make a change or I need to kind of reassess who I'm using, whether it's professional or a contractor, I just go back to that Rolodex. And so one of those key fears earlier in my investing career was, what do I do when there's a plumbing issue or an electrical issue? That's how I kind of got over that hurdle.
Yeah, it helps if you just got somebody that a million of your peers trust, and like, oh, that's a real relief. They're professionals; they'll take care of things. And it's going to cost more than doing it yourself, but your mental sanity is pretty critical if you want to keep growing.
It's worth it.
You're not going to be able to do it otherwise. But if just on the topic of mentorship, and I know you're helping to mentor people, and you mentioned the guy came over. He was kind of a value add because you're both on the same page. But for people who don't really have a value add, but they're seeking mentorship, how would you recommend they approach it?
I've been open to when I'm in the car having phone calls with a couple of these investors, so we can brainstorm all you want for 45 minutes.
Because you're driving anyway, right?
I'm there anyways, right? That's usually the time of day when I try to make most of my calls, so that when I get home, I'm not too tied up with the real estate stuff. I think that would be the main way. If you see somebody that's a step or two ahead of you, that where you want to get to, those are the types of people to reach out to. Ideally, you could even offer up something in return if you have time and they don't have time, like a busy real estate investor. Maybe you could offer to drive them around one day when they're looking at properties, pick their brain, or go on a property tour. Those are very easy and inexpensive. More of these real estate investors are now holding property tours. You could spend 3 hours on a Saturday morning looking at 5 different houses, seeing contractors there, other investors, other agents. So those are just a couple of ways that you could easily pick up a lot of info, or just message these investors and ask them specific questions. A lot of folks in this community are so giving and so helpful. So because I've had some awesome mentors, I'm more than willing to give back.
Yeah, and I feel the same. Again, it all just comes down to time. The coffee meetups are tough to do. But I have one person that reached out to me, and he wants to help with the development. So he's been putting in a couple hours a week helping me with stuff with the development. Now, granted, that's a little tricky because I have to do a lot of teaching in assigning the tasks. But still a very worthwhile concept and a very worthwhile thing for me to explore and see. Okay, how can we work together to, you learn and help me with what I'm doing too. And so on that note, people who are really good with video and audio editing and also want to learn about real estate, hit me up because there might just be a fit.
There you go.
Yeah, get my plug in there. Okay, so do you have a goal that you've set as are you trying to acquire cash flow for retirement? Are you trying to hit a net worth goal? What is it for you that's sent you down this path?
Mm-hmm. I enjoy my full-time job. I really do. But as we've seen the kind of fruits of the labor of those early years of being in the market, it's all about buying and waiting, right? That's what those first two properties have allowed us to do now, where we can start looking at cash flow more. So my goal is eventually to replace as much of my take-home pay as I can every month. Mm-hmm. If I'm anywhere at 40, 50, 60% of that monthly take-home pay, I'm in the range where I could consider leaving that job, right? So that could, right. If that's in 2 years or 5 years or in 10 years, I don't think I'll be there forever. Even though it's a great place to work. That's my goal. So until we kind of stabilize, I won't know exactly where I am, but if I'm at 50% of my take-home pay just from cash flow each month from a couple of properties, and I have entire days to focus on real estate, to attract JV money, to maybe do wholesaling. I would love to knock on doors or have people for me knocking on doors, right? Getting into some of these other strategies that I've just really come across in the last year or so. I'm sure I could more than make up that difference in pay. So in terms of a goal, it's not a specific monetary amount, but it's knowing that you have that stable portfolio that's bringing you 50-60% of my current wage.
Yeah. So something that could support your family, allow you the free time, and then anything you earn on top of that is really gravy.
Yep.
And it allows you to be creative. And this goes back to just being able to make up every day as you choose, right?
That's right.
Real estate's fun. Not everybody would agree, but it can be. I said this on my last podcast, but I love going and touring properties. To me, that's fun. I could do that all day long and analyze them, look at them structurally, say which ones are good, which ones are bad, which ones I wouldn't want to deal with, and just kind of picture what I could do and what I could turn it into. I always liked creating something. I don't know if everyone shares that, but do you have fun with this, like the duplex conversion process? Are you looking forward to it?
I do. I enjoy, I've become passionate about real estate. Whereas earlier on, we were trying to do everything to avoid having real estate affect our life in any way. We were just buying, putting in tenants, and hoping that we never heard from them. We weren't planning on buying a second property, a third one. Things just happen, right? But now I enjoy every part of it. I wish I could be on site every single day, doing some of the work myself, bringing in trades, looking for more properties, trying to set up creative deals, right? An interesting thing that I've heard multiple times from investors that have left their full-time jobs is one of the key differences is the free time that they then have in their days allows them to be so much more creative, because they're not constrained with driving to work, coming back from work, busy family life, and then you're trying to do this side hustle at the same time. It really lets you think, right?
Yeah, Matt McKeever's an excellent example of that. Matt, he wouldn't show his hand as to exactly what his monthly cash flow is, but it's enough, as he said. And so he's got his full-time camera guy, and it covers that. Yeah. And then he's got, he's got his rent that he pays where he lives. And basically, he's free to pursue things like, developing a property management software. And yes, there are things that are going to consume his time, but they're his own projects. They're things that tweak his interest. And that, I think, is what it's really about, right? Like, what would you like to work on today? What would you like to make your mission for the next few months? And then when that one's done, what's next?
That's right.
And to me, part of me, that's what I do like about real estate projects, and, like renovating this, and then you tenant it and then you move on to the next one. Or I do some construction as well, some building for other people. And, there's a certain amount of, hey, this is fun, get to make this one, and then I get to move on. So I can definitely relate there. And I think that's where it comes down to, right? Just being able to keep it fresh. And so Matt, I think he was on episode 24, if I'm not mistaken, if anyone wants to check that one out. There's getting to be a few of them now. So
yeah, you're getting up there.
Yeah.
Just the final thought on that. It's forced me to be more efficient, having a full-time job and trying to build the real estate portfolio on the side. I've cut out as many things as I could that I was doing before that wasn't really pushing the goals that we have forward. So I mean, until I can do this every day, all day, it really does force me to focus just on the highest value add activities.
Couldn't agree more. Think about what somebody would pay you to do what you're doing, right? Like, could you hire somebody to do that for $15? Because then that's all it's worth, right?
Yep.
Whereas if you're doing something that, it's negotiating a deal and it's going to make you $50,000, well, that's a well-paid, and an hourly that pays really well. You should probably do that one, right? What are you worth, right? Are you $1,000 an hour? Are you $5,000 an hour? Or are you $15 an hour, right? Like, where do you want to be, and where are you, I guess? And then you can set goals around that, right? So cut out the activities that you could find somebody at a very low cost to do, aka me in video editing. That's the next step, right? I gotta release that grip I've got on that, but it'll happen. For now, we'll keep crushing it out, and then and that'll be in the future plans to get a little assistance with this. But anyways, Michael, before we wrap up, is there anything you would want our audience to know, or a thought or an anecdote you'd like to share?
I would say, especially for younger investors, folks that are just getting started out, one of the key pieces of advice that has stuck with me is don't compare yourself to other investors out there. Don't get anxious when you see somebody that either bought a property when they were really young, or multiple properties, or they now own 10, 20 units, or they're buying big buildings. Go at your own pace. If you're interested in real estate investing, take your time, do your research, learn, surround yourself with the right people, and then things will work out. You don't know how many hours that person's working, if they're happy, if they're stressed out, how their personal life is. You might see them on social media and everything looks great, but it might not be exactly the way things are, right? I found myself getting a little bit anxious probably a year ago as I uncovered this whole investing circle. But then as I watched other investors and I reached out to some of them, that was a message that a few of them shared with me that I just wanted to pass on. Go at your own pace. Things will work out. It might take you longer. You might not get to as many properties as fast, but just the fact that you're thinking about buying a good asset that is in your portfolio for the rest of your life, and in 25 years, a tenant has paid that mortgage off for you, you're going to be further ahead than probably the majority of Canadians.
Yeah, just by being patient and don't do anything. Don't sell. Just hang on to it, right? No matter what happens, hang on to it. If you can, if that was in your plan, right? If you're flipping, then I guess you got to sell some. But yeah, well said. I like that. And just for the record, so you said you're an accountant, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, you work for a firm doing corporate and personal?
Yeah, I'm a CPA by trade. I do personal tax returns in my spare time every April, May, June. And I work for the provincial government and internal audit currently. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Very nice. All right. So Michael, if people wanted to connect with you, what is the best way for them to do so?
They can find me on Instagram under Wach Properties, WACH Properties, all one word. Okay. And also on Facebook under my name, Michal Wach. And it's Michael without the E, last name WACH.
Okay, so I believe I have you on both. So I'll just grab those and I will put them in the description along with my contact details if anyone wants to reach out to me. And all right, well, thanks a lot, Michael. I really appreciate you coming on.
No problem. Thanks for having me, Andrew.
Okay, we'll see you on the next one.
See ya.